End podcast episode. It has been several weeks since we've been together. We've been hither and yon doing various and sundry things, but we're glad to be back again. We're here with um, Dr. George Antonios, a true man of faith and verity. And here I am. I'm just a truly humble servant.
Don't worry, there's plenty of people online that doubt my doctor. You're not a real doctor. A real doctor would never say things like this. Where's your thesis and where'd you graduate from and all that kind of stuff. So
How right are they?
I didn't graduate from one of their seminaries, but I had to answer one guy recently. I gave the link to my book on Daniel, and I mentioned Great Plains Baptist Divinity School and General Ron Tottingham in South Dakota. Um, that's where I got my PhD from. I started with the Charity Bible Baptist Institute, and then I found out that Great Plains Baptist Divinity School is actually semi-accredited because of General Ron Tottingham and his standing with the government there. So he was one of the leaders, if not the leader, of the U.S. Army chaplains. I had met him at one point, and those two institutes had a joint program where Great Plains Baptist Divinity School recognizes the credits that I had gotten with charity. So I transferred those and I finished my PhD with them. It cost me an arm and a leg too to do it in American dollars. So, and then the proof is in the pudding, as they say. My thesis is the most comprehensive commentary on Daniel in a generation. So I spent 11 years doing it, and if I've, you know, it's like when they came up to the Lord, they said, "How knoweth this man letters?" They were offended that he didn't graduate from Jerusalem.
Man, that's a great point. And I think, yeah, I think that is really, it's an interesting subject to me. The verification of a man uh, and what he believes. Is he truly qualified? And does he have what it takes? And I think how what does it say? How knoweth this man letters, having never learned?
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So then we have to ask ourselves, what is the definition of learning? Then he never learned. What do you mean by that? You mean he did not go to our synagogue, or he wasn't
yeah,
at our school?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think you could play both sides of that, right? You could say, yeah, I don't have to go to your school. I can stay uneducated. Some guys, you know what I mean? It's like I'm ignorant, and there's a stubbornness in ignorance.
there is, there is.
There's a pride on both sides of it.
Yes, there's David Gibbs that tells in his book about preaching. He says there was one preacher overheard another who was kind of intimidated by the learning of one preacher. He said, "Well, I thank God, brother. I'm just an ignorant old soul." And the preacher retorted, "Well, you have a lot to be thankful for." So
So good. So good. I
he
heard
says, "Yeah, go ahead."
I said it reminds me of somebody who said some preacher, he was talking about a young man who made a strident claim that he said, I am going to be original or nothing. And the man said he ended up being both.
Yeah,
Oh, I got to tell you this little anecdote. I went and visited DC, my sister and brother-in-law, or should I say, my brother-in-law and sister. Amen. Either way, Brad and Deborah Wells. I went and saw them in DC, and they are, really getting close to getting a building for the
oh,
first
good,
time,
good.
and they're really close. So we went around there. It's right near a little bookstore called Capitol Hill Books, and they are like, you got to see this bookstore. So I go in there. Now I don't know. I'm predisposed to not like bookstores. Uh,
Oh yeah,
if they call themselves bookstores, anybody that says, "Oh wow, it's a great bookstore," what is in your definition a good bookstore? Well, for me, it is not that it is. It's modern and updated, and it has a coffee bar and it has all kinds of gifts. The most ideal bookstore for me is one that A, you have to look to find, and
Hmm.
you have to search. B, it doesn't have a bunch of new releases. It's all books that have lasted the
Hmm.
test of time. It's a used bookstore, and it's packed full with books. It's just jammed. There's no room to walk.
Mm.
Um, it's just aisles that are tiny, floors that are uneven. That's my ideal bookstore. And when I went into it, I said, "Yep, this is a real bookstore. This is crazy." And it's a tiny little place, just jam packed, floor to ceiling. And the reason why is not because I'm just quirky like that. For me, the reason is I don't. The presentation and the appearance is not so important. It's the substance. What what is actually there that has been proven, that has lasted, right? And I guess that's what you're saying. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, right? It's not what
Yeah.
does it look like, is what does it taste like. And so when you talk about having a degree, I would say, okay, we can criticize degrees up one side down the other. Or do you want a degree from Harvard where it costs $80,000 a year and they're teaching you
Yeah.
about DEI?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They don't know the Bible. A lot of, not all of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, they just come out disbelievers. And I engage in formally structured debates with doctors. I've debated Dr. Robert Sugenis, one of the foremost Catholic apologists in the world. Actually, his last debate ever was with mine. He announced it at the top of the debate.
You beat
I've
them.
debated. Well, at the very end, this is the last debate. Sir Robert Sugenis debated James White 6 times, and
Hmm.
I got to debate him in the spring on Standing for Truth. And at the very end, I'm going to put it in a snippet on Council Might. At the very, very end, as he's making his closing remarks, I interrupt him and I asked him, I said, would you grant that if one were to read the Bible literally, one would come to a dispensational understanding of the Bible? And he said, yes, I'll grant that much. And that was like just a wow moment. This guy's debated for about 50 years, 50. And
Wow.
his last statement in a formal debate was pretty much that. So I've debated
So
Dr.
you're
Sam
telling me
Frost.
you made him hang up his skates? Is that what you're telling me?
No, no, that's why I mentioned I wish I could claim that. I'd boast of that. But I can't boast of that because he announced that it would be his last debate at the very top of the debate, at the very intro, and he has no idea who I am. I think what happened was he was more like a tired old man who was shooing. Somebody said he had the attitude of an old man shooing kids off of his lawn, but he wasn't expecting what he got. That's for sure. So I think because I was a nobody to him, he thought he would just kind of just wave it off. Even in the at the end, and responding to the audience questions, when I went over the twin natures of the kingdom, that there's a spiritual and a physical one, he had resisted me on that at the top of the debate. When we got there, he gets the last word because the audience question was addressed to him. So the moderator says, "Do you want to say anything after I spoke?" He's like, "No." He did a good job with that. Which again, I was saying things that he was denying. It was great. It was just great. So, the Lord's helped me go toe to toe with people who are accredited in the fancy universities, and the debates are out there. So I let the audience judge. I've learned Greek. I've learned Hebrew. I can read the Bible in 6-7 languages. I mean, just because I didn't graduate from Harvard or Dallas Theological Seminary or what or some reform. There's a lot of reform seminaries out there, and they think they're the only ones who are legit. Or what's the one that John MacArthur's got there?
Shepherd's
Master,
College
yeah,
or Master's
Shepherd's
College?
Conference, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so this is a great entry point, I think, for a question that I have. Um, I was just talking with a young man last night at church, and he was saying he loves debates, and I think he's in his 20s, maybe 25, I don't know, something like that. And he said, I love debates, and he said, I think you guys should do a debate. I'd like to hear you do a debate with atheists. And and somebody was referencing that they had heard you talking, and there was one where you were debating a Muslim, and it kind of got hot, and then he eventually bounced from the conversation.
Mhm.
I didn't watch that one, but I'm interested in that concept of debate because for me, when I get into a debate, often it gets emotional, it's hard for me to stay focused because I haven't done formal debates where we both know that we're coming with opposing viewpoints and having to think through and in counterpoint. So what is the way that you approach a debate, a topic where you're going to disagree? How do you keep your cool?
Well, for me personally, it took the Lord 15 years before I got anywhere near where I could engage in a argument that I thought was worthy concerning a potentially dangerous heresy and maintain my cool and not lose control of my emotions or say something that I regretted. Because I always have in the back of my mind, I always wanted to print that verse on my arm, the servant of the Lord must not strive but be gentle unto all men, apt to teach, patient, meekly instructing those that oppose themselves. If God peradventure will give them repentance and the acknowledging of the truth. So I can't tell you how many times I walked away from witnessing, from debating on the street in informal settings, walked away saying, Lord, I'm sorry. Like, I want to be better. I want to adorn the doctrine of Christ, and I want to remain in control. It took 15 years to get anywhere near. I'm still not where I ought to be, but enough where I can have the open mics and I can engage in formal debates and maintain a good spirit and be, by God's grace, somewhat of a good example. As I said, it's the Lord's work. So it takes a long, at least for me, being an Arab, it took the Lord a long time to do it. I think you'd make a great debater. I think you remind me a little bit of like the disposition that Michael Knowles has. And I have an issue with Michael Knowles because I can't stand his smug Catholicism. I grew up in those circles, having gone to a Jesuit school. But he gets people who are intentional on riling him up, and he just smiles right back in their faces, and he's calm and he's collected, and he's got good arguments. And you've got that kind of like quiet disposition that you can take the barbs and address them. So the first thing I would say, especially to a young man in his 20s, there are exceptions. There's people who are exceptionally gifted of the Lord. Maybe it's a question of their culture or of their genetic makeup that they're more able to rule their spirits. But if he is to engage in them, he better be careful about that, because young people get so fired up and they overblow differences sometimes. You got to really pick your battles on. I'll debate anything really that contradicts the Bible, but I have to be able to discern between what is a major heresy and what is a minor difference that's worth discussing, but we're not going to get into strife about it. Well, the advantage of the debate is the structure itself is helpful. I think to have a structured debate protects you. That's why it's structured. If you come in without a structure, you're much more likely to go off the rails and get angry and say things that are stupid. The advantage of a structured debate is it limits you, it limits the other. You've got, 15-minute openers, 5-minute, 8-minute rebuttals, a few minutes of cross-examinations. Then sometimes some debates will open up for a free-for-all between the two interlocutors. I've actually debated 3 interlocutors at the same time, a total of 3. And then there'll be Q&As from the audience. That's usually how the structure goes. So the structure is great. It protects. Study your other opponent's point of view. Make sure you understand it. And be ready for the accusations. Expect their counters. You have to be able to expect their counters. And if you can't do it in a good spirit, don't do it at all. Because the purpose of good doctrine is charity. Otherwise, we're just striving about words to no profit and subverting the hearers, like Paul says. So you got to choose your battles.
That's excellent input. I'm specifically interested in the journey that you took from pride to charity in your spirit, because no doubt pride is one of the main motivating factors. The idea of being right. I want to be right. In other words, I want to beat you. I'm better than you. It's a superiority complex that I think motivates a lot of debate. And so how would you distinguish that? What was that journey like?
What really helped me is actually writing the book of Daniel. And there was a particular point in time where...
Did you write the book of Daniel?
Sorry. Did I say that?
To me, that
shelf.
Being inspired does help. I will I will say that it's got to be an unusual experience. What is that like?
I looked at the shelf to point to it, and it says Daniel right there. That's what I meant. That book of Daniel, the commentary. That's a comment. That the book that's a commentary on the book of Daniel.
How did you purpose in your heart at some point that you would not defile yourself with a bad spirit?
Yeah. Somebody will take that. You look how proud he is. He thinks he wrote the book of Daniel.
Well, you take Antonio's. I mean, he wrote Daniel, but there's other books.
Well, the Ruckmanite background kind of fires people up, right? They'll debate anything and they'll call anybody heretic. So Dr. Ruckman had a special kind of gift. He has his own ministry. I think the Lord has to temper the Ruckmanism in a lot of young men. Not to jettison it, but to temper it. That's a big deal. That's a big challenge. You don't want to come off with a chip on your shoulder. But what happened was, long story short, I hit a dead end for 6 months in the commentary. I had to pray and really pray and walk around talking to the Lord about it. And I finally realized I had written, when you make it, like I thought the hiccup was here, and then I had to back up and see if I had gone wrong at a previous step. Then I had to back up and see if I had gone wrong at a previous step. And eventually it came to my almost foundational. We're talking eschatology. We're not talking about salvation or anything fundamental like that. And then I realized I would never have thought that I made a mistake quite back there. And I had written I don't know, something like 20 pages proving my point. And had some people had read it and said wow, that's really good stuff. And I realized how easy it is to think that I've built a good case. That was a real humbling experience. I can see now how people could see it a certain way. I can see how they can skin it a certain way. And that's made me a lot more understanding of why they pick up a certain position. And I don't necessarily ascribe it to the fact that they're deceived of Satan or they're wicked or anything like that. So seeing how I had made a mistake in my reasoning, I could understand how others could also. And that's helped me be a lot more patient and gracious and help them see the way out and help them see how they got to that point. There was a guy on the internet, I'm not going to mention his name because I think he's a bad influence today. He's a bad example today. But I heard a lot of people saying, question your assumptions, come to the text as a clean slate, don't bring your presuppositions. You hear it said, everybody amens that. Nobody's not going to amen that. But I saw a guy on YouTube actually showing us what that looked like and doing it to himself. And that was an eye opener. So I've kind of internalized some of that stuff. I think the problem is that he did it so much that he's let go of. He has he's basically become
Untethered.
like a skeptic. Yeah, right.
He's floating in space.
Yeah, he's a full-on Greek skeptic. Yeah, which is unfortunate. There's some things that he says. Paul tells Timothy to know the things that he has heard and received, knowing of whom thou hast heard them. To hold fast the form of sound word. So you have to have some undeniable, unshakable, uncompromisable, unnegotiable, solid ground. But beyond that, if a guy believes that the tribulation is 3.5 years or 7, it's not a big deal, guys. If it really isn't. It's
I think the big deal comes when you believe that somehow or other you are going to be 100% right, but you're choosing to be right. You want to be right so that you can be superior to other people, rather than looking at God and saying, Lord, I want to honor you, because that's what he said. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed. Ashamed of what? Ashamed of not being a workman in the eyes of God. Not necessarily being ashamed in the eyes of other people, because the fear of man bringeth a snare. The fear of the Lord is strong confidence. So everybody wants to follow somebody who's definitive, but you can be just a stubborn loudmouth and be definitive. That doesn't necessarily mean you're right, but you may deceive the hearts of the simple. and there's a confidence that comes, I think, not from directly from uh, just your personality or from your desire to shout everybody down. There's a confidence that comes from saying, I'm following God and God is going this direction. It's faith. You have to have faith in order to please God. And faith in what? Faith in God and faith that God wrote this down. So rather than looking around at other people, not serving with eye service as men pleasers, but serving God, having a heart that is focused on, yes, it is possible to know God, and it is possible to know the truth. You could be ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Something that helped me years ago um, was the idea of when you start untethering from things and you start doubting everything, are you willing to also doubt your doubts? Or
Right.
are you simply doubting because you think that's
Yeah.
where the strength and defense is?
Be skeptical of skepticism.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing that helped me a great deal was Pastor Sal helped me with this concept of the truth as an objective thing, not subjective. In other words, uh, I've said this so many times that maybe it'll help someone today, that I came to him one time with a Bible passage and I asked him about this particular passage. I said, this guy says that this is the way to interpret this passage. And this guy over here says, no, that's the way to interpret this passage. Two separate uh, perspectives. Which of them is right? And Pastor Sal said, the Bible is right. And that was, maybe that was his way of getting me out of the office so he could get back to work. Maybe he didn't know the answer, but really it helped me because it made me realize the Bible does not have to be understood by people, by me, in order for it to be right. In order for it to be effective in my life, I have to understand it correctly. But it is right whether I understand it or not. It is an objective truth that came from God, and it effectually worketh in them that believe. But that doesn't mean it's ineffectual unless I understand it. It means it's ineffectual to me. And so that it's not about my church getting it all down right. We do the right thing. We believe the right thing, not like you heretics over there.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about, what does God say? We're just all on the train. The train's going through town, Midnight Express, and we get on it. Lord willing, we're privileged to get on the truth and to ride the truth. I'm not the power, it's the power. And sometimes people get off. Sometimes I've fallen off. I'm just trying to get in, find my proper seat, and sit down and hang on for the length of time God has me on this earth. And rather than our church or my belief or my teaching is the locomotive that's powering this whole thing. It's true. It is true. I may not even understand how the train works, but it's working. And if I can humble myself and learn, maybe I can become a conductor at some point, whatever. But I never become the designer.
And part of that humility and confidence that you're talking about at the beginning is you need to be to have the confidence and the humility to put up with the comments and insults and kind of ignore those and not get sucked into them, because there's people, especially on the internet, there's a good thing to it. When you debate someone face to face, it filters out, it kind of pushes back,
diffuses.
Yeah, a lot of the kind of unbridled comments that people make and jabs. It's just when you're behind the keyboard sitting on a screen, you don't have the dynamic of that interpersonal dynamic. It's you and a screen, and it's for some reason the worst of humankind comes out when it's like that. It's like you're spitting into the void, right? It feels like you're spitting into the void, so you just kind of like blur it all up. When you have a person on the other side in a formal setting, you want to be respected, so you're going to show them respect. And if you can't put up with the comments, because you're going to get them, especially if you're going to be online, then don't do it. Brother Gibb told me not to read. He says he doesn't read the comments. I do, but I'm in the place now in my life where I like, you never completely not care. I think it'd be an exaggeration, but I'm so much unconcerned that uh, it doesn't stay with me during the day. I don't like. I just kind of whatever, I almost have glad they're there, because the people who do this online make themselves look bad. People who are genuinely seeking the truth will see that and call it out. I'll engage once, maybe twice, and then no more, and then just let it there. There's some things that do hurt more than others, but you gotta have that confidence. A great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them.
Hmm.
So the eagles, if you will, you can't fly as an eagle if you're gonna be let yourself be harassed by the crows. So just rise up, fly higher. They can't follow the eagle up there, and you'll be free. Leave them in the comments section.
Is the comments that hurt you the most about your beard? Is that what you would say?
Yes, I wish I wish it was fuller. I wanted more. I want like a I want like a Canadian lumberjack beard. I just want to grow, or like the Irish,
Yes.
Guinness drinking kind of stuff. But my wife won't let me.
Okay.
She actually likes like a 3-day beard. She
Okay.
likes the stubble look. That's where if she could, she would freeze it there.
Oh, that's great.
I
That's
had
great.
Pastor Joel Greer. He's teaching on Council Night Seminary. He's teaching sermon building,
The
and he
Admiral.
mentioned, yeah, and he mentioned that exactly that. He said that he got invited to a men's kind of breakfast, a pastor's breakfast in the area, and he's pretty much the only one sporting a beard, and every group of men that believe that pastors should always be clean shaven, and the guy barbed him. He leaned over. He said, I'm actually working on a sermon about beards, and Brother Greer said, have you thought about starting with Jesus? And the guy went, oh, because they plucked the Lord's beard. He's like, I hadn't thought about that. It's like, really? You're preparing a sermon on beards, and the incarnate God doesn't come to your mind? That's just okay. I get it in certain settings. Like, there's Sally laughing. They're right there. I get it in certain settings. Like I heard a guy in Mississippi. I don't know if you ever heard of Camp Zion in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. Percy Ray.
Percy Ray, yeah. So that thing is deader than dead. It's full on Calvinist now.
Really?
Yeah, it's been for years. My brother-in-law took me there. I feel bad for my brother-in-law, Stephen Cathy. He's in Central Tennessee. If you guys are looking for a church, he's doing a great job. Married to my sister Sarah, and he's like, "I'm gonna take you there." We went there, and a common friend. We slept there for a night, and he was all happy about bringing me there. And it was dead. Like I can't think of a better adjective than dead, really. And the speakers were Calvinist. And one of the guys there, an old-time preacher, was 90 years old, and he's part of that crew of people who, he said his mom told him he was going out of the house to pick up the mail, and he hadn't fully shaved. He had stubble, and his mom said, like, you're gonna go out like that? And he says, Mom, I'm just picking up the mail. He was at his mom's house for something, and she said, you're a preacher, son, remember. So he's like, honor your mother and father, and he went in and he shaved his beard to go out and pick up the mail. Now, what I'll say is this is, I get it. I wouldn't stand here and say guys who say this, guys who believe in shaving their beards, I would not say they're self-righteous, hypocritical Pharisees. I wouldn't, because that's where we fall into that trap. We become the things that we're judging. If you're in a culture where in a certain part of the States where they expect preachers to be clean shaven, my father every day up at 6:00 in the morning shaving his beard, his military kind of guy. I respect that about him. For him, that's how a man should look. He never accepted a beard on a man, and I admire my dad for how clean shaven, clean cut he was at all times. If that's the culture, that's fine. You go with it because that's the culture. It'll help people listen to you. It becomes an issue. It's like the seminary thing. You went to that seminary, great. It becomes an issue when you turn around and then you make it a standard for the other when the Lord hasn't made it a standard. Mm-hmm. That's when it becomes an issue.
My opinion about the beard and the facial hair thing is that it is a carryover from World War II and the military, just as you said. Because if you go back to, the 1880s, 90s, guys were wearing big old beards, large beards. D.L. Moody, Charles Spurgeon, they all had beards. And I guess it's probably cyclical, because I don't think Jonathan Edwards is ever pictured with a beard. He was, obviously before then, 1700s. But I don't know if that was in style. Like I think that the style in early America was not facial hair. So from what I can tell, and I haven't done a study, maybe somebody could do some deep diving somewhere and look at the cyclical nature of facial hair. But
Hmm.
it becomes a thing. So you had guys that built big churches in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and none of them had facial hair. It was not a masculine thing in American culture at that time. It was seen as a hippie. Hippies
Hmm.
wore beards, and so as a result of that, it was like it became a standard of righteousness. And you could argue that it's a standard of
Interesting.
cleanliness, but of righteousness. Righteousness does not come from the outside in. With the We have righteousness of Christ from the inside out, and it should reflect on the outside the righteousness of Christ. But it is ironic to say that godly people don't wear beards when Jesus Christ himself had a beard. That I actually have a story. A friend of mine, Mike Reagan, he was uh, he was asked to come and work for a famous preacher who was known for being a very conservative and a holiness type of a preacher. And certainly we ought to be holy and we ought to have our feet held to the fire. It's always good to have those purifying uh,
Hmm.
messages. But he told him, he said, Brother Reagan, I want you to come work here, and we have to get rid of your beard. And he's like, well, Jesus had a beard. And he's like, oh, Brother Reagan.
That's it. There was no follow up.
I mean, that was it. Like, what can you say?
Oh,
How could
I thought he was laughing like I've heard 1,000 times, and wait till you hear my retort. I
well
thought
that
that was the laugh.
yeah, I mean,
And then
now maybe he didn't tell me the end of the story. I heard it from him. That's
Jesus
all I
wore
heard.
sandals too, or something like that. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
mean, when you're Christ-like, then we'll let you wear a beard, or
Right,
whatever. I
right,
don't know.
something like that. You got a lot of remarks over your. I remember when you shifted to the mustache.
Yeah, I still see myself in a mustache, and I'm like, how did this happen? I don't even know how it happened. I feel like
I love, I love what you said from the pulpit. I was there. You're like, scorn only makes it grow. I thought that was brilliant.
I've had Walt Disney.
Scorn. Walt Disney. That's true.
I've had
Just don't shave the ends off. Just be
yes,
careful.
exactly. I've had plenty of Hitler references. Um, Yeah, it kind of fits. I like the 40s era, and
Yeah.
so I kind of like that style, which they did have those in the military. They had mustaches that were had to be neatly trimmed and blah 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 in the American military. But um, yeah, it's so interesting when you start getting um there's an identity crisis or an existential crisis that, and for a long time I never knew what existential crisis meant, but it's a crisis regarding your existence. And
Yeah.
basically, you know am I going to die? Who am I? What's going on with my existence? um, but I had this it's when you are attacked or when you are made to think about something that maybe you're wrong in, it does bring an existential crisis. It causes you to stop and consider, okay, who am I? And people think, well, I'm going to die, I cease to exist, and they get like this fight or flight response, that they're going to push back and they're going to fight to the death, because if I don't win this argument, then my whole life is a scam, it's a lie. And
Mm.
you never get to a point as a believer where you don't have to walk by faith. That's why, to me, the greatest argument for the King James Bible being the Word of God is not simply the reliability of the manuscripts. Because if it's that, then it's like, duh, of course it's the Word of God. Look at 95% of the manuscripts agree together. And if you're trying to remove faith, then it's never going to succeed,
Mhm.
because God requires you to have faith. And speaking of manuscripts, I would say this: even if you were to watch John write the original autographa, you would still have to have faith to believe that he was writing the
Yes.
inspired Word of God.
Yes. Yes.
And even
Yeah.
if he handed it directly to you, and that this is
Yeah,
your
yeah.
copy.
The people of Jeremiah's day, they're like, no, you lied. You made that stuff up when you went to inquire of the Lord. That's so definitely.
They
And
doubted Jesus Christ and condemned him and
and
put him on a cross. So
the fight or flight to thing when it's tied to identity, that's another important point because, and this is so I've seen. This is why I thank God I didn't get online till I was in my late 30s, and I didn't start debates till my late 30s. Uh, because what happens before is if you get up there too early on, and what happens is people tie their identity to a doctrine. And I'm not talking about, and there's doctors that I'm happy to tie my identity to, like the deity of the Lord Jesus Christ, salvation by grace through faith, that kind of stuff, the second coming of Christ, that the inspiration of the Bible. I'll die on those hills, but they tie their identity to what I consider to be secondary doctrines, and there's no need to. And then what happens is you fight for that so hard, you fight for it so intensely, and you mock people so badly who disagree with you that you leave yourself no room for genuine self-examination, because you would have to deny those things publicly which you have taught publicly, and then you'd be the guy who is in the wrong, and you'd have to walk back a whole bunch of stuff in front of a lot of people, and then you would risk their scorn and their ridicule. And I think the moment people do that, they imprison themselves. They cannot allow themselves genuine self-reflection and reevaluation. And so I got in just in time where I was able to, from the beginning, I framed the channel as I'm open to learning, and that's given me the liberty to, even in front of the church sometimes, to go back and say, look, I know I taught this guys about 4 years ago. I would calibrate this. I'm not saying about tossing your church to every wind of doctrine. Every 5 years, you're going to reshuffle your cards completely. I'm not talking about that. It's like a tree. Percy Lake, preacher Percy Lake, gave great illustration once. The trunk is stable. The roots are there. It's not going anywhere. But up there, you have to sway with the wind a little bit, or else you snap. There's got to be some kind of flexibility. God, as a master engineer, builds in flexibility into everything he does, whether biological flexibility in our DNA. An engineer builds a bridge, he allows it to expand and contract with the seasons, or else it would snap. Everything in the world is built on a dynamic balance, not a static balance. So you're constantly correcting to the right or to the left. And from the very beginning, I positioned myself that way. That allows me. It's basically, I was preempting my future pride.
mhm.
So I knew that I would be too proud to correct myself if I held on too tightly. And I had to wait till I studied some doctrines out really in depth and gone through them, that I'm sure I'm not going to go, like, there's no chance that I'm going back on Calvinism, for example. Like, there's no chance. And so I'll go out on that fighting, but it took me years to really process all that information, get to a point where I can do it. And that's why I don't advise it. Even writing books to somebody in their 20s or something like that, it takes time to mature in your understanding your position, before you go out there and you
Mhm.
present something that's solid, that's not going to shift.
Well, even like what you just said to me is an example of reading the Word of God carefully and understanding it, what it says, what it does not say. So the flexibility, you'd say, well, I don't want to be flexible. I want to be foundational. I mean, I don't want to be firm. I don't want to be. I don't want to be carried about with every wind of doctrine. But the model that you were just suggesting was not being carried about with every wind of doctrine, because the heresy is shown, it is typified as wind that carries you about. But notice the term carried about. And then another thing to factor in is that the Lord likened the Holy Spirit's movement to wind.
Also, yeah.
Thou hearest the sound thereof, canst not tell whence it cometh, whither it goeth. Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits. Well, why would you have to try the spirits? Because many false teachers are gone out in the world, and they present themselves as legitimate. So if you're just like, I want to be right, I want to win every game, you're facing a formidable foe. You're facing someone who's smarter than you. if you can't humble yourself before the wisdom of before God, understanding the deceptive power of Satan, then you are opening up a channel in your own mind and heart to be deceived. If a man
Mhm.
thinketh himself to be something when he is nothing, he
He's
deceiveth
nothing. Yeah.
himself. Right?
Yeah. He
That's the
knoweth
problem.
nothing yet as he ought to know. Nothing. Imagine, like, whatever. So there's doctrines I'm not shifting from. I believe them, but I still don't understand them the way I should. I still don't understand the way I should the Trinity. I don't understand the way I should the deity of Christ. I don't understand the way I should eternal security. I don't understand the way I should the inspiration of the scriptures. I don't understand the way I should salvation by grace through faith. And there's still room for growth. I'm not going to deny them, but there's still room for growth and clarity, even on
Yeah.
these things.
And in any relationship, when you start out, you think, well, my relationship is based on understanding this person. I know them. I know them like my own soul. Well, probably not.
Yeah.
You like them. You like what you know, and you're willing to move forward. But if you've been married for any length of time, you realize it's not a matter of understanding them completely 100%. And that's the reason why you can be compatible with them. It is a process of learning about them. And there are layers
Mm,
to this person. And you get down to another layer, and then you accept that by faith. And you say, I'm committed to you. I love you. And then you go to another layer. And what you really realize is that person has their own personhood. They have their own
mhm,
identity.
mhm.
And
Apart from you.
exactly, I do not control them by understanding. That's really what we're talking about often.
Mm,
I want to understand that person, which means I want to be able to predict everything about you so I can control you,
mm,
rather than I don't understand everything, but what I see, I accept and I'm willing to work with, and I'm willing to invest in you and love you. I think it's the same with the Lord, right? Um, it's not okay. I now have God completely on a string, so I can control him. I know that book. I know that book. What do you mean by that?
mm.
Yeah, you want to know the Bible, but you're supposed to be approved unto God. After all, wasn't it his book that he wrote? I mean, how do you take the infinite God and explain him on paper?
Yeah,
That's what he's trying to do.
there's a funny passage where the Lord goes through the parables in Matthew chapter 13. And I always kind of giggle at that when I get there and chuckle, I should say, at it, because he goes through the seven parables and he says, "Have you understood these things?" They say unto him, "Yea, Lord." It's like
We got it. Next.
it's like
Next
in
slide.
class, it's in math class when you were there. The teacher's like, "Right, so you guys understand?" And everyone's like, "Mm-hmm."
Yeah.
And then
Lunch.
we're too
Let's go to
afraid to like
lunch.
say, "I'm the guy who's going to ask the fourth question." It's it like, yes, oh yes,
Well,
oh yes, I understand. Yes.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like Princess Bride, where he goes, "You've heard of Plato, Socrates, Aristotle?" Yes. Morons.
I kind of half believe that though. And I've read half of Plato, literally.
Have
But
you?
yeah, I get it. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like, yeah, whatever you know. I learned that years ago. It's like when my kids were younger, they were stacked grades, like second, third, fourth grade, and the ones that were in the higher grades, they would say, look at the homework of the younger one, like, that is so easy,
Yeah.
so easy. My homework
Yeah.
is hard. Like, I
Yeah.
already know all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Relative to your strength, it's easy.
Yes, exactly. That's a good point. Finding the narrative. That's a good point about zeal and courage being distinct from the depth of charity. Yeah, that's the truth. It's easier to
Yeah.
have
A
that.
lot of boldness is just arrogance.
Hmm.
But yeah, it takes time. You can have natural gifts, but to have them sanctified and grow in those gifts that you don't have, that's the real ball game. That's right
What do
there.
you think
And
it is?
a lot of charity is a lack of boldness too. Sometimes what passes off as gentleness and
Hmm.
meekness
Yeah.
is a lack of confidence, or a desire to be a people pleaser,
Hmm.
or a natural um, dislike of conflict, and so the need to avoid it. So we're a mess. We a lot of times we paint our natural qualities as spiritual gifts when they're just natural qualities. You know,
What do you think? Why do you think the Apostle Paul asked multiple times for boldness, for people to pray that he would be bold?
well, in his case, he's facing death. It's not like Paul is not preaching the gospel in 20th century Texas. You know, he's preaching the gospel in front of monarchs who, without almost well, there was kind of a due process in Roman law, but they could have fed him to the lions. So principally, I think it was that the fear of death and torture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's completely different. That's completely different than arrogance or patriotism or whatever that might
Yeah,
cause someone to say, you know what, I'm going to shut their mouth. I'm going to teach them a lesson. When
yeah.
you know
Come be
that,
bold in a Muslim country. If you want to be bold, come come with me to Lebanon. I'll take you to the Dahiya of Beirut and the Hezbollah stronghold, and those guys who are so powerful on the internet, so great. That I have an open mic. I get all all the comments and arguments in the world on the comments, and then I open up the mic and I say, let's talk about Jesus Christ. Let's talk about Calvinism. And granted, I don't have that much of a reach on the channel, but there's enough people there because the comments are there, and it's a different ballgame when you get to face the person.
yeah, it is. It is because, and I think that's where charity, knowledge puffeth up, but charity edifieth. And Paul opened and alleged, and then he sought
Mhm.
to convince and persuade men.
Correct. To win them.
And right, to win is you can a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So you could quote unquote beat somebody, but you're not trying to beat them, you're trying to win them.
Yeah.
He that winneth souls is wise. You got to have, wise as serpents, harmless as doves.
Or yes, definitely 100%. Or there's some opponents, and I learned this from Brother Gip. I think he gave great advice here once he was in Canada on soul winning in the streets to groups. He said, I'm talking to a group of guys, and there's the one guy who's gonna be the jerk. He wants to be the center of attention, and he's gonna jump in there and try to shut me off or say some stupid, foolish comment or something abrasive. Something really challenging and uncouth. And he says that guy I punch in the face, and he means he doesn't mean physically, obviously.
Right.
He's like I lay into that guy. He says
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not going to win that guy, but there's somebody there in the back who's more quiet, who's not necessarily engaging, but he's listening intently and he wants to know. And I don't want to let that guy rob that other guy of the opportunity to hear what he needs to hear. And he says, when I punch hard against the clown, he shuts up, and then the rest have a chance to hear. And I went out and I've applied that advice, and it has worked very well. So sometimes in some debates, or a number of the debates, I try to be concerned with winning my interlocutor, but a lot of times I may allow myself to punch a little harder, just so for the audience who's listening can see how weak the heresy is or how bad the heresy is, and they are freer in the secrets of their own heart to shift towards the truth. So there's that dynamic too.
Mm-hmm. Well, we had intended to get into Genesis 11 today, but I've enjoyed this conversation just because I think with all the hoopla that surrounding the death of Charlie Kirk, it's brought a lot of questions to mind, and I think forks in the road for people to say, am I going to be the kind of person that is bold in my faith, and am I willing to engage in conversation boldly and verbally, not just win them with my attitude, but then, okay, once I have said that, once I have decided to be bold, how can I also be charitable so that I can, with my spirit, I can win them? They wondered at Jesus at the gracious words which proceeded out of his mouth. And then at the same time, the Pharisees could not handle his straightforward boldness. Finding that moderation between those two things, I think, is so essential.
Yeah, well, they could not gainsay nor resist the spirit and wisdom whereby Stephen spake. Both.
Hmm.
Both.
Wow. Okay, so anything else that you want to give to us here?
No, that was fun. I enjoyed this. I thank God for a free society where we can have the free exchange of ideas. So keep praying that we have that freedom. So that's on the general level, and on the personal level, I'd ask for the prayers of all those listening. We are October 23rd. I'll be offline in a few days for about 10 days. I have to be completely offline. So I just ask for protection for myself and those with me. I'd appreciate people's prayers for protection for about the next 2 weeks.
Are you visiting Middle Earth?
Yeah, yeah, I'm going Midgard. Yeah, the land of the dwarves.
To Isengard? Do you have a ring of
Oh,
some kind?
Isengard. Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry.
Do you have a ring of some kind?
No.
you're carrying?
Well, in a manner, I suppose. In a manner. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, we'll definitely be in prayer for that, and it's it's always a good opportunity to have a new chapter, a new experience of some kind, and be a blessing.
Yeah. Thank
Love
you.
it. Well, guys, if you're interested in connecting with us, you can reach us at witsendguys@gmail.com. And this is a little bit of a shorter intro to get back on the train here. And will you be around next week, or are you going to be gone?
No, I'll be gone.
Okay. So
I'll be
it'll
gone
be a
for
little
about 2
while
weeks.
before we come back. So remember us fondly. Remember us speaking about charity and kind things. And hopefully that'll leave a good taste in your mouth, and we'll pick it back up again next time around. Any final words?
No, God bless you and Godspeed, guys.
All right. Bye now.
Bye bye.